On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we're boldly going where no podcast has ever gone before. We're taking stock of the Toronto Raptors at the quarter pole of the season. And boy, oh boy, it's been damn fun so far.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the number one sports podcast network in the land. It is Tuesday, December the 2nd, and I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 12 seasons on various platforms. Going on my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. 100% free to join. As always, we'd love to see you become part of our listener community over there. It's a great time. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And we will get started here on your Tuesday edition of the show, taking stock of the team at the quarter pole of the season, slightly over the quarter pole. 20 and a half games is technically the quarter pole. They've played 21 games, and with a couple of days off here, or I guess a day off, they play later tonight. It seems perfect to take advantage of this nice, clean break in the 82 game schedule to talk about what's happened a quarter of the way through the season for your Toronto Raptors. We'll also get into what's coming up in the next 20 games, what's going to define the next 20 games for the Toronto Raptors. We'll get into some first quarter of the season awards and superlatives for your Toronto Raptors. But first, I want to just take stock of what's been truly a way beyond expectations start to the season for the Raptors. And compared to preseason expectations, I don't know how you could be any happier with how things have gone so far. They're 14-7. They're 10th in offense. They're 5th in defense. They're fun. They're connected. There's like talk of Blue Jays level chemistry going on with this team. They've been an absolute delight to watch. Yeah, they lost a couple games over the weekend. That is not going to dampen my mood about this team whatsoever. The first quarter of the year has gone about as well as you could possibly hope for. And it's true on sort of the macro level. And I think it's true when you kind of dig into sort of the individual goals of the team for this season. I think everything that you would have classified as a goal for this season has been fulfilled beautifully through the first 21 games. You know, there are kind of like 5 things that I had as sort of things I'd like to see from the team this season. I'm sure some of these were internal goals for the team as well. They talked about some of them, of course, on media day and coming into the year. But the 5 things I had as sort of the clear, defined, these are the things we're hoping to get out of this year. Number 1, just compete and try to win basketball games. So far, so good. They're winning games. They're playing serious ball. They're not actively trying to lose games. Love it. Boom, check. Gathering information. I think they've done a great job gathering information after a couple of seasons of just like a dead zone statistically for the team. Very little to glean from the 2023-24 season where they changed the team full on halfway through and got like 20 games maybe of the new look team before everyone missed the last 20 games and they lost most of the last 20 games in an attempt to keep their pick, which they did not pick, did not keep. Good times all around. We loved that 2024 season, didn't we? The Jonte Porter era, as they call it. Last year, a pretty dead zone for stats as well, right? No Emmanuel Quickly for the first half of the season. The last 20 games were nothing. They were like total nonsense, and they were finding new ways to try to engineer losses and oftentimes failing to do so because they were too talented to do it against really, really bad teams that they had on the schedule down the stretch. And so all the information last year is noisy and incomplete and frankly, full on useless. And this year, the starters have been playing together. They're the second most used lineup in the entire NBA. That's great. We have some actual tape and some tape that suggests they might be kind of good, although, we'll see against tougher competition. But so far, so good. A plus 6.3 net rating for the Raptors starting lineup. The team has, knock on wood, largely been healthy. Obviously, no RJ Barrett for the last week or so. Jakob Poeltl in and out with his back stuff and the injury management and the back-to-backs. But for the most part, they've been healthy. And the guys who are currently hurt, mostly RJ Barrett, it seems just like kind of a management thing they're going to do throughout the season, which is fine. You got to make sure he's good for the games that matter late in the season, and back stuff is not to be trifled with. RJ Barrett seems like he's not going to have a prolonged absence here, though the sooner he can get back, the better, based on how the offense has performed without him, which we'll surely talk about as we go through the show here a little bit more in depth. But yeah, like, you are getting actual information on the players you have. You're able to draw conclusions about who's good, who fits, who maybe doesn't fit, what are the next steps for this team. That was critical coming into the season that they got that, and so far so good on that front. Again, knock on every piece of wood in your vicinity. It's really, really important that they stay healthy because, again, this information is incredibly valuable. The third thing, development. Look, been a bit up and down in terms of some individual cases. Grady Dick's had an uneven season, to put it kindly. Ochai Agbaji, after what seemed like a really nice developmental step forward last year into like a nice rotation piece, has kind of fallen off a cliff this season. I think he's shown some signs of life the last couple of games, some good defense, some nice drives, stuff like that. The three-point shot not falling, though, is a real problem for Ochai Agbaji, and he does look a lot more like the player who was not very good when they first traded for him than the player he looked like that last year. But on the flip side, Jamal Shed, pretty awesome story so far this season. The playmaking jump from him, the creativity, the ball security, on top of hitting his threes, playing better, more disciplined defense. Yeah, he still fouls a bunch, but the whole team fouls a bunch, and that's just kind of part of how they play. I think he's been way more sort of in control as a defensive player this season than he was last year. And the way he's guiding the second unit offense has been absolutely fantastic to watch. He's a delight. He's a huge staple in the locker room when it comes to like leadership and as like a guiding voice for the team. That's been awesome. Jacoby Walter, I think, is showing some real signs of being an additive winning role player. The three-point shooting has come along. He's one of the team leaders in three-point shooting at this point after a miserable start. The defense, I think, is like really, really interesting with him, man. It pops off the screen. I think, yeah, it's been up and down, but it's going to be up and down for a 21-year-old who's just kind of getting his feet wet. I think for the most part, it's been more bad than good over the last couple of weeks here for Jacoby Walter, and I think those sort of trend lines are pointing up for him. And then, of course, you have Scotty Barnes, who's sort of the big developmental project this team has undertaken for the last 4 or 5 years. And my God, he's been unbelievable this season, as we'll talk a little bit more as we get into our awards for players on the team through the first part of the season. He's been just ridiculous. And the two-way impact he's had has been substantial. He's made strides as a scorer, as a finisher, as, apparently a three-point shooter. He just never misses, as a defensive player who just does everything for you. He's been unbelievable. And so I think you give a passing grade on the development side of things as well. Yeah, it's not been perfect. There have been guys who've taken steps back, but none of this is linear. It's all very difficult. And I think overall, you got to be pretty happy with where the development track is for a lot of these dudes. The fourth thing, just fight for the top 6. This was a hope I had coming into the year. I think it was basically, I think the team wanted as well. I don't think they were out here being like, yeah, we'll finish 8th. It'll be fine. No, I think they wanted to at least be in the mix for a top 6 seed. So far, so good on that one as well. They're 3rd in the Eastern Conference, pretty clearly and firmly in the pack of like 9 teams that are going to be jostling for position in the Eastern Conference all season long, stake themselves to a nice head start with the 14-5 start out of the gate. And I don't think this team is going anywhere. They might have spells where they lose a handful of games. Maybe they go 5-5 or 4-6 over a stretch of 10 here and there. I think that's going to be the case for basically every team in the Eastern Conference at one point or another, or many points or others throughout the season. And I think it's going to be just like super close, very little margin for error for all these teams all season long. But this is right where you want to be. This is like they're going to be playing in competitive, serious games against teams that are their contemporaries within the league. You're going to get to measure yourself against them. I think they've done a great job of that so far. 2-0 against the Hawks, 3-0 against the Cavs, 1-1 against the Bucks. Could have been 2-0 based on how they played in that first game for the most part that they played. I think it was the second game of the season, the home opener. There was plenty to like there in that game against the Bucks. 1-1 against the Sixers. There's obviously, you'd like to see them perform better against the Knicks than they did over the weekend, but they've got plenty of opportunities for that. Can't wait to see them play the Pistons and the Heat and all these teams in this mess. The Celtics, they have a couple games with them coming up here too. These are going to be great, fun, measuring stick games all season long, and they're going to be competitive. They're going to be close. They're going to lose some. They're going to win plenty. And I think they are firmly where I think most people would have wanted, which is fighting for the top 6 in the Eastern Conference. in a conference that's, I think, a lot deeper and better than a lot of people expected. None of these teams are serious title contenders compared to the heavies out west, but compared to the Eastern Conference, like and sort of the depth of the conference, like it's pretty competitive stuff out there, and it's, I think, a really good testing ground for a team like the Raptors trying to get their feet wet. Doesn't hurt that they also have had some success in the NBA Cup. That's a little bonus on top of all the successes from the first quarter. And then lastly, I would say the thing that's been really important for the future outlook of the team is we've seen a lot of players' value get rehabbed so far. And I think this was a real sort of issue coming into the season. You looked at the thing and the whole thing with the Raptors. Wow, they're expensive. Wow, they cost so much money. Wow. What is this team doing spending this much money on these players? But I think they've proven, hey, like this can be a pretty good team as constructed right now. That's awesome. And I think when you do that, when you win games, there's the sort of feedback loop effect of you sort of build up the reputation of your players in the eyes of the league when you're winning games as well. And I think that has had a pretty clear impact on the overall value that you'd prescribe. What's the word I'm looking for there? Who knows? I don't know words. I just do a podcast. But I think when you look at Scotty Barnes, right, the max contract he had coming into the year, there was some real concern, especially in the preseason when he looked rough, from lots of folks of how can you be paying a max to this guy? That was the wrong guy to commit this money to. Turns out Scotty Barnes is pretty damn good, and making the 25% max that he currently earns, that is absolutely no problem. He's going to be just fine on that contract for the life of it, and probably is going to give you plenty of surplus value over the life of it. That's fantastic. Brandon Ingram, plenty of questions about, wow, is he really worth $40 million? And yeah, it's been up and down. Last couple of games haven't been so good, but I think all told, you have to feel pretty good about paying Brandon Ingram $40 million a year or just below it. That's, I have no problem with that deal right now. RJ Barrett at 28 mil, perfectly in line with his value, and he's been fantastic this season. Maybe he's even delivered a little more than that 28 million. And then even Emmanuel Quickly, who gets a lot of crap for his contract. It's not like it's not his fault that they gave it to him. First of all, direct your ire somewhere else. But I think at 32.5 million, no, he's not maybe living up to that fully over the course of the season. And I think his numbers are just kind of depressed because he's playing on a team where a bunch of guys eat. And so he was never going to put up 26 a game or anything like that. But the way he's playing of late, giving more on the defensive end, the threes are falling. I think the playmaking is making some serious jumps, both in terms of his drive and kick stuff, his assist to guys in the paint, that type of stuff. I think his decision-making is improving. It's not perfect by any means. And yeah, he's prone to swoons and games where he doesn't look so good, but all told, there have clearly been stretches of this season where he has obviously been a $32.5 million player, which, again, you might think of that. That's a lot of money. Is that like a max deal? No, it's not. He is the 61st highest paid player in the NBA this season in year 2 of his deal. Year 3, year 4, year 5, that's only going to go down. I bet he'll be like the 100th highest paid player in the league by the time his contract is over. That's going to work out just fine. This deal is going to age fine. And as the years come off and as he continues to play well, that deal does not look like an unmovable albatross like it maybe did in the summertime after he missed most of last season. That looks like a deal that at the very least a team will be like, all right, let's take him on in a trade for a star, which might be where the Raptors go. It might be quickly moving out for a sort of lead guard type as the sort of next move to upgrade this team. We'll see. Hard to say. Lots of things can happen. Maybe it's Pirtle for a big man. Who's to say? But I think right now, you have to look at a lot of these guys and say they have seriously rehabbed their value through the first part of the season and look like guys who can fit into the Raptors ethos as a team, which is always staying opportunistic, always keeping an eye on the trade market, and ready to strike with movable contracts when the time comes along. They still have all their picks as well, some young dudes on the bench. I think they're in pretty great shape. So yeah, hard to overstate how much more hopeful the outlook for the team looks now compared to a couple months ago. And I think that's all part of this being just like a really, really successful first quarter of the year for the Raptors. And if this keeps up, this is going to go down as an extremely successful Raptors season, one of the most successful compared to preseason expectations that I think we've seen in a very, very long time. We'll come back to the other side, get into the next 20 games or so and how this team can evolve from what it's been to what it can be over the course of the next 20, where I think they're going to be tested quite a bit. We'll get into that coming up in just one second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And right now, perfect time to go check out FanDuel as the NFL season is moving fast, and one play can suddenly make everything feel different. That is what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on the action as it unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. Maybe your receiver gets hot, makes a really incredible catch, shifts the momentum a bit. Maybe every momentum swing from a big turnover, the defense tightens up, whatever it might be. Maybe a player of import goes out with an injury for a bit and feels like maybe that's going to turn the tide. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Players' props update as guys heat up. And you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the games moves fast, and so can you. Back at it here on your Tuesday edition of the show, taking stock at the quarter pole for your 14-7 Toronto Raptors back in action tonight against the Portland Trail Blazers, a game they should get. I know there's this sort of perception, the Blazers are good, they're fun, they're feisty. They're bottom 10 on both ends of the floor. They should win this game. They got some injuries in the backcourt too. This should be a game the Raptors take. Hopefully they do and take care of business after not taking care of business against the Charlotte Hornets on Saturday. Kind of the first instance of them not taking care of business all season long. Let's get into the next 20 games and sort of where the team evolves from here. And I do think, like, if there's something we've learned from the first quarter of the season, it's that Darko Rajakovic is a damn good coach. And it's that he's nothing if not malleable and constantly looking to adjust what the team is doing and how they play to get the best out of it. And I think going into the second quarter of the season, we're going to be seeing a lot of adaptation because I think this team is about to get tested. Again, they're 10th in offense, 5th in defense. They've been as high as 5th on offense, and their half-court offense has been as high as 2nd in the NBA, 1st in the NBA, I think, for one day. It's taken a bit of a dip pretty precipitously since RJ Barrett went out. They're down to 10th in offense, 7th in half-court offense since RJ went down 4 games ago. But, the other sort of core tenets of the team are there. They're a great transition team. They're great at limiting transition to the other way. The math case is that this team is pretty good and has a lot of staying power, but I think it is going to get some resistance and some friction in the next 20 games or so as the competition heats up. And look, 82 games is a lot of games in a conference this deep and competitive. You're going to get your stuff scouted to death. You're going to have to adapt to that. It's the same as like a rookie coming into the league, setting the league on fire. The league says, okay, we know about that guy now. They scout for him, and then you have to adjust. And that is the sort of push and pull of player development. It works on the team level as well. And I think a really good example of this, I talked a bit about it yesterday on the show after the weekend, was the Hornets. Like, the Raptors all season long have been dominant on baseline and sideline out of bounds plays, just can't be stopped. The Hornets did an incredible job snuffing that stuff out and making it really tricky for the Raptors to score in those situations. And I think that's an example of they were clearly very well scouted as to what they're doing. They're going to have to mix it up a little bit, adapt, and evolve. And look, again, I think Darko Rajakovic has shown a real capacity for that. I'm not worried, but that's going to be, I think, the true sort of through line test of the next 20 or so games as we head closer to the trade deadline, which is in the third quarter of the season. But these next 20 games are going to set the tone for what the trade deadline looks like, not just for the Raptors, but for everybody. It's kind of how it always goes. I think, they're going to get tested on defense. I think their defensive shot profile is a thing that's really going to kind of go through the ringer here and see just how real is this. They give the fourth most rim looks in the league, 6th most corner threes. As we talked about, they've gotten a little bit better in terms of limiting rim shots over the last couple of weeks, but still a concern for them with their aggression on the ball, with the amount of blow-bys they give up. I feel like the Hornets and Knicks just got blow-by after blow-by after blow-by in those games, and that's how you get rim shots and corner threes, is you have really plush point-of-attack defense. And, we've talked about it a lot. Other teams are shooting 32% against the Raptors from 3, the second lowest percentage of any team in the league. Only Miami is getting better shot luck and three-point shot opponent luck. And I think, no matter what calculus they're doing on who they're funneling shots to and who they're contesting and how they're contesting and all that stuff, which, can go into limiting how other teams do hitting their threes, I do think, this is just going to be, I think, a pretty interesting stretch of games to test just how real is what they're doing to stop other teams from hitting threes. It's just, again, it's a variance thing more than anything else. And there's a real chance that the sort of mean wave of regression to the mean cruel wave of regression to the mean, that's better English, comes for them, and they start giving up a lot of threes. And how do they adapt to that? How do they adjust what they're doing to account for regression to the mean taking place from deep? Maybe they're so good at actually just limiting guys hitting threes that this continues, and they're doing the right things on funneling shots to the right guys and contesting when they need to and all of that. It's tough to sustain that level of shot luck over the course of an entire season. Some teams do it. There's like every year, someone's got to be the luckiest 3-point opponent shooting team. Maybe the Raptors are in that mix, but 32% is really low. And at some point, teams are going to hit more threes, as we saw again in that Knicks game, particularly in the first quarter with Deuce McBride just going nuts. Do they change what they do defensively? Like, they've changed a lot, of course, since the start of the year. As we talked about last week with Joe Wolfond. If you haven't listened to it, Friday's show, we dove deep into the Raptors defense and how it's evolved over the year. And, they've done a lot to sort of scale back the full court pressure, the blind double, stuff like that. But do they lean into more sort of conservative defense? Do they change things up even further? Do they mess around with zone at all to keep teams out of the middle of the floor? They've played to date per synergy exactly one zone possession all season long. I wonder if that's a wrinkle they throw in now that, some of the league has seen them. They've been around a couple times. They've played most of the teams in the league. Again, they've trimmed down the attempts at the rim over the last couple of weeks. That's great. Good start. The rebounding is better. That's great. Awesome. Love to see it. Although I bet the Knicks game kind of knocked them down a little bit without Jakob Poeltl. But can they sustain what they've done defensively so far? Again, the process, I think, has all been very good. Some of the shot luck stuff, we'll see how it holds up. But yeah, I think there's, at least real sort of cause for intrigue as to what they're able to do defensively as they start playing better offenses. On offense, I think the big area of adaptation is going to have to be in crunch time. Like, I think, you look at the success they've had in close games. They're 7-3 in clutch situations. That's great. You love it. You're winning close games. And I think there's this idea that, well, it's because Brandon Ingram's just like the lockdown dude. You give it to him and he scores. And yeah, sometimes he does, right? The Pacers game is a great example. The Hornets game they won. He didn't score necessarily, but he made the right reads out of double teams and got them the buckets they needed. But I think all told, their offense has been a little too Ingram heavy down the stretch. And I think that's something they're going to have to mix up. Their crunch time offense has been kind of cheeks so far. A 98.4 offensive rating in crunch time per NBA.com. And look, I think there's space for those Brandon Ingram centric possessions. Like, I think in the perfect situations where, your last possession, you don't want to turn over, like you desperately want to avoid a turnover. Sure, throw it to Ingram, have him create something from nothing. Great. But I think they have enough within what they do in the half court on offense that they can diversify it a little bit. I mean, this has been the strength of their offense for the most part this season, is they've been really damn good at mixing things up and keeping defenses guessing as to what's coming next every time down the floor. And I don't think they've had that same effect in crunch time. I think they've gone a little too Ingram heavy. And the watch Brandon Cook offense, like, again, it has its limitations. And I think, we've seen, Scotty Barnes have instances where he's unguardable in one-on-one situations, and teams seem a little more hesitant to send help his way, maybe because he's such a good passer, maybe because they trust him to, score less than Brandon Ingram in those situations. But I think Scotty's proven that Hornets game was a great example. You throw the ball to him, he can get something for you. Maybe you start doing that a little bit more as a sort of change of pace instead of just saying, Brandon, please save us. Because, I don't think they need that. If you want to be simple, there are other ways to be simple and to avoid turnovers. I think another thing, too, is like that Quickly Poeltl pick and roll has historically been very good at getting them good shots, whether it's for Quickly or Poeltl or for other guys. Maybe you just run classic base spread pick and roll with those guys sometimes in clutch minutes. Maybe it's Shed and Poeltl pick and roll in those double point guard lineups with Quickly and Barnes and Ingram scattered around as shooters. I mean, that can totally work as well. I think they just got to work a little bit more diversity into how they're playing these games close, because you can't just have it be Ingram, please get the ball and do something. Please draw two and make the right read. He's not always making the right read either, right? Like, he's got to get better with that. He's got to get quicker with it. Teams aren't making it easy the way they stack up on him and the positioning of guys on the floor. Like, there's all sorts of factors in that. But that, I think, to me, is the key offensive storyline over the next little bit. I have full faith their offense can be good for the most part. Obviously, RJ makes it better when he's healthy, but I have full faith they can be very good on offense in the regular course of games over the first 43 minutes of games. It's when they get close and sort of into crunch time, can they avoid the desire to just kind of simplify it so much that it becomes so Ingram-centric? Because I love Brandon Ingram. He's great, but like, he's not Kevin Durant. He's not one of these incredible every shot he takes you feel like is going in guys. He has nights like that for sure. And on those nights, you let him cook. But there's a reason he's not on a supermax contract like some of the inner circle superstars of the NBA. It's because he's just not quite as good as those guys. And I think leaning on him too much is putting too much on his shoulders and putting him in a position not to succeed, right? He's been so good playing in this egalitarian offense where he's, getting the ball on the move while other stuff happens across the court. He's finding other guys on the move because there's all sorts of action going on. And I think you lose a lot of that when you kind of play this boiled down crunch time offense they've been playing. And again, 98.4 offensive rating in the clutch. That's not great. I'd like to see that improve over the next 20 games. But yeah, how they adapt to this stuff over the next 20, I think is going to be kind of the biggest story to watch. And I think they've been on to a great start. The league's on notice now. They're not surprising anybody. They're going to start to adapt to them. How they adapt back is going to tell the tale of where we sit when we get to the halfway point of the season. We'll come back on the other side, close things out with some rapid fire first quarter awards for your Toronto Raptors. Your classic MVP, DPOY, and then some other ones like biggest letdown and worst loss and other stuff like that to close things out. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the best way to play daily fantasy sports. And look, the holiday season, there's all kinds of sports going on. Bowl games, big basketball matchups. The NBA Cup is happening. You've got playoff pushes in the NFL. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy sports. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. And it's very simple. You pick a player, multiple players, you take more or less on a stats projection that Prize Picks has offered you. And if you get those all right, you're going to win some scratch. That's pretty sweet. And they have the new stacks feature as well, which lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in one lineup. So, for example, Scotty Barnes, you want more on points, rebounds, and blocks? You can do that over at Prize Picks with their new stacks feature. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which keeps everything flowing. To download the Prize Picks app today, use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Back at it here, wrapping things up as we take stock of the Raptors. After 21 games, they played 22 tonight against the Portland Trail Blazers to kick off the second quarter of the season in earnest. A quarter of the season that will include NBA Cup showdowns, hopefully multiple, maybe a trip to Vegas. Wouldn't that be a lot of fun? But before we get to that, got to hand out some first quarter awards because, no one does this in the podcasting industry or the basketball media industry. No one's ever done this. No one's ever handed out awards based on what players have done in the first quarter of the season. This is breaking new podcast ground. For me, MVP for the Raptors, obviously Scotty Barnes. He's been so good. He is the best player on this team. I know Brandon Ingram has been a lovely addition, and he scores lots of points, and he has big nights. But this whole thing works because Scotty Barnes is a two-way monster. And I think his offensive steps forward this season have been amazing. The mid-range feels like absolute butter. It's a real salve for the Raptors in the half court when they need something. I think he's done a way better job of just like using brute force to get to the rim, move guys out of the way, get to that rim, those rim attempts and that short floater. I think the three-point shot, obviously, we'll see if it sticks. I mean, we're a quarter of the way into the season now, and he's at 41.4%. He's at least set a pretty good baseline for himself. And even if there's some slippage, he's going to hopefully finish somewhere in the mid-30s or something like that. That's a huge deal. He's got career high efficiency. He's got, I think, just a career best overall impact when he's on the floor. You feel Scotty Barnes on the floor in a way you never had before. He's the MVP, no doubt. Clearly, he's very, very good. And, will he have the numbers to be an all-NBA guy? We'll see. Obviously, guys fall off because they miss time, and 65 games is the cutoff. I think he's at least putting himself in the running to be in the all-NBA conversation, and certainly in the in the all-defense conversation, if not defensive player of the year, which leads me to defensive player of the year. Also, Scotty Barnes. Duh, he's so good. Sixth man of the year. Let's go with the Mamu Jamal Shed Voltron. Just those two dudes put together, mush them together. They're the sixth man of the year. I can't choose between the two. I love watching both equally. Mamu, I think, obviously has like more production night to night. Although Shed, I think, just does a really good job running those second units. I think the two-guard lineup, Shed plus Quickly, have been super fun, really effective. And I think both of those guys have just really helped this team tick. Not the two guys I would have picked as sort of the best bench contributors to this team. I think I had Grady Dick a little higher as my sort of prediction of who was going to be sort of the clear six man on this team. Jacoby Walter, I think, he struggled early on. I think he's coming into form, but I thought he'd have more to say as sort of one of the better reserves on this team. Shed and Mamu, just every single night, though. Those guys come in the game. It's like a warm blanket. I feel very comfortable when they're on the floor. So they are combined the sixth man of the year. Most pleasant surprise, I'm going to say Mamu on his own. I did not think much of the Mamu signing because I thought, okay, he'll get some run, I guess. But if the Spurs didn't really have any use for him and the Bucks didn't really have any use for him, two teams where, the Bucks can use anybody. Like, it's just someone please play for this team. And if the Spurs, who in theory, if you can pair a 3-point shooting big man next to Wemby, I mean, that's pretty awesome. If they were like, we're not really in on the Mamu thing, I thought, okay, maybe he'll have some nice moments here and there, sort of like a Chris Boucher light, where he doesn't play games that really matter, but when he's in there, he might have a heater or two that are really fun. But he's just been full on extremely good. And I think he's holding up on the defensive end better than expected. I think the way he's scaled up his minutes and just like playing a career high minutes, career high load, as far as just like things he's being asked to do, it's been wildly impressive. And yeah, he's been awesome and like one of the best reserves in basketball. I love watching Mamu play. I love watching him let it rip from three. I love watching him put it on the deck and drive by dudes and muscle dudes out for buckets. His finishing at the rim, it feels like he never misses at the rim, except for that one game where he missed like everything at the rim and it was funny. But yeah, really enjoying the Mamu experience. He's been a delightful, pleasant surprise. And I guess like also pleasant surprise, just like the team as a whole being 14-7. Yeah, that's pretty sweet too. Biggest letdown, I have Grady Dick. I think there's a lot of good stuff process-wise going on here. He's got to hit his shots eventually. I think the defense has been really encouraging, actually. He's in the right spots. He's using his hands, all that stuff. But, yeah, the threes just kind of got to fall for him to be fully effective. And at some point, teams are going to stop guarding him as though he's a lethal three-point shooter, which they typically do guard him like that. But that's going to go away if they don't start to fall at some point here. And, again, it's up and down. There are nights where he looks fantastic and nights where he's kind of quiet. I think he's usually pretty additive when he's on the floor to kind of make life easier for others, but who knows how long that'll last if he's not going to hit threes. He's the biggest letdown. But again, there's not really any huge, gigantic, like, oh no, this is so depressing letdowns on this team. That's because they've been pretty good. Guy to watch in the next 20 games. I was torn here between two guys. I'm going to go Colin Murray-Boyles, who, it's been a little bit fits and starts to start the year because of some health stuff, but I think you see, like, there's a lot to like with Colin Murray-Boyles. I think the passing is coming along, the vision, the decision-making, and not trying to force stuff like he was maybe early in the season. The defensive work from him is fantastic. I think what he's done on the glass, he was killer on the glass in that game against the Knicks. In transition, the dunks, like the interior finishing, really excited to see him hopefully get some run here for the next 20 games. And I think there's a real chance that in 20 games time, we're talking about him as one of those core helpful bench guys along with Shed and Mamu. He's just got to get a little more run and more consistency with that run and hopefully stop missing time for weird little knocks here and there and illnesses, etc. I had Jacoby Walter as a close second here too. Seems like he's finding his legs, and I think there's a lot to like there too. And yeah, in 20 games time, if we're looking as the Raptors bench as Mamu, Shed, Murray-Boyles, and Walter as kind of the core guys with Grady Dick maybe as like the 10th guy, wouldn't be at all surprised. Not good for Grady Dick if that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's how the bench kind of evolves over the next 20 games here. Best win of the season so far, I'll go on the road against a nearly healthy Cleveland team. Again, really impressive. One of the best games Scotty Barnes ever played. One of the best games I've seen Emmanuel Quickly play as well. Super fun on the road. Yeah, the Cavs run a back-to-back, but none of their players played the night before. None of their good players did at least. And so, yeah, I think, they didn't have Garland, but they had Allen in that game. Raptors just took it to them. That was a ton of fun. Worst loss? You might say the Hornets game because they blew it. I'm going to go all the way back to the third game of the season, getting waxed by the Dallas Mavericks, who clearly suck, giving up 139 points to the Mavericks, who have like the 29th ranked offense in the NBA. That wasn't ideal. Boy, what a different world it is after those first 5 games where they looked kind of lost defensively compared to what they are now. But that is the worst loss of the season, I think, based on quality of competition versus sort of what they allowed the competition to do to them. Best game? I'll go with the Pacers win. Just like a really entertaining back and forth game. You had the NBA Cup juice there as well. The Ingram buzzer beater. Just like a wildly entertaining basketball game. The second runner-up here one I got for me is the second Hawks game as well. Thought that game was really entertaining, really well played by two teams that were just super locked in on defense before the Raptors kind of broke the dam. The first sort of coming out party for the starting lineup, closing that game super strong. Really enjoyed that game. And so it's a runner up for me. But yeah, Pacers, that was just a damn fun basketball game. And my favorite highlight, it's the Brandon Ingram dunk on Ryan Cockbrenner. That was awesome. It was incredible. And it sort of is a revival of the Raptors being a team that dunks in full force. Like, really beautiful stuff. Seen that explosion from Ingram, all that stuff. It's we love big dunks, and plenty of good highlights in that game. The 2 blocks at the end were pretty sweet too. The Ingram block is on the short list of best highlights of the season, but that dunk on Cockbrenner was amazing. One of the best dunks I've seen in person, maybe ever. Like, flat out one of the best dunks I've ever seen live. Pretty awesome stuff. And yeah, that's it for my end quarter mark superlatives and awards. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. We'll be back again tomorrow. Big V will be along. We'll talk about Raptors Blazers. Katie Heindel along on Thursday. Maybe do a mailbag that day, so get your questions into the mailbag chat. And then, of course, we've got Raptors Lakers on Thursday. We'll talk about that on Friday. Thanks so much for hanging out. Appreciate you. As always, please follow, subscribe, rate, review. Join the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. 100% free to join, as always. And we'll talk to you on Wednesday. Thanks for hanging. Enjoy the game tonight. Bye-bye. Oh, my God. Totally lost it.